Thank you so much for staying tuned on Smart 24 TV and watching The Point. And of course, my name is Anthony Sebale, and of course, I'm your host. You can check me out on Twitter at Anthony Sebale. You can also follow Smart 24 TV at Smart 24 TV. And of course, catch us live on YouTube. That is at Smart 24 TV Live on our YouTube live stream. And leave a comment in the comment section or anything you might have of concern to our discussion tonight. Now, tonight we are talking the state of the economy, and I'm with Mr. Apollo Muninda, who is the head of communications at the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. Now, Mr. Apollo, the proposed budget for next financial year 2023-2024 will be financed through mainly domestic revenue equivalent to over 28.8 trillion. Now, this is, of course, a rise from the 25 trillion of the previous budget. And the good news is that I'm happy that finally we are getting to finance more than 50% now of our budget, 58% this time round of the total budget. And also the domestic borrowing is going to go down to 1.6 trillion in favor, of course, of the private sector, especially on the interests there. But let's talk about the 28 trillion this time round. When the taxpayer hears this, definitely what could come to their mind is probably new taxes, maybe higher taxes. It's a little bit worrying for especially the taxpayer. But what is the plan for this money, and where are we going to get it from?
Thank you, Anthony. Well, that's our budget. As you know, our budget is increasing from 49.9 trillion. And of course, like you said, 28 is coming from our collections. We're giving them a task, and we think they are going to manage this task. But also, I have to inform you that about 2.5 trillion of this money is not available. It's not part of the discretionary expenditure government is going to have because of the obligations we have, including paying our debt obligations. So you find that it looks big, but we don't have a lot of money at our discretion to spend. So that's why you see the tightening that I've been talking about. But we are going to have a raft of measures. Right now, we don't expect new taxes for now. We don't expect new taxes for now. But of course, when we take tax bills to Parliament, they will be basically for strengthening the measures that we have in place to ensure that we get this revenue. As you know, there are so many, quite a number of leakages that we need to plug to get this money. But also, we are implementing what we call the domestic revenue mobilization strategy. So we hope that once this is implemented, as we continue to implement this strategy, we are going to get this money. And one of the strategies and one of the action points under this strategy is the administrative measures by URA. As you know, if you heard during their when they are releasing their media results, they told you how they have improved in terms of revenue mobilization, even without new tax measures. So we are going to strengthen this. We are going to ensure that URA is facilitated to have the human resource, to have the automation they require, the systems and technology, and more support in terms of numbers and logistics to ensure that they plug these loopholes, so that we can get the revenue we want as a country. But also, beyond that, we are looking at We are looking at rationalization of tax expenditures.
Okay.
As you know, we've been having these tax expenditures. Many people call them incentives, but as you know, government is now looking at this because it has been a cry by many stakeholders that the government loses a lot of revenue through tax expenditures. So government has reached a decision that we implement a framework to look at these tax expenditures. One of the things is, because you cannot take away incentives, we need incentives. Yeah, if you are to attract foreign direct investment, you need to attract investors. So you must have sweeteners. We're not calling off these tax expenditures. They are going to be there, but we are going to increase the monitoring of these expenditures. For instance, if you're coming and you're saying, okay, we are going to give you land, and maybe you're not going to pay this, but at the end of the day, we are going to employ, you are going to create employment for our people. You're going to pay these taxes. So that is how countries develop. So, and that's how you attract investors in your country. But what we are saying is we are going to look at this under this framework. After maybe a given period, we look and say, well, this is what we promised. You promised that you are going to deliver A, B, C, D. Why have you not delivered? And if they can't really justify, we're not guaranteeing that you're going to continue with these expenditures. Apart from making sure that there's a rigorous process of who really qualifies for this, we're also going to establish what we call sunset clauses, so that this is not in perpetuity. You don't hold these incentives in perpetuity. So, and also we are going to strengthen monitoring and evaluation and see really, are we benefiting? Because if we do get the benefits from these investors as planned, surely this will support the growth of the economy.
Yeah, in the long term.
In the long term. So we think by doing that, we are going to generate some of that money is really going to support the economy. Yeah.
Well, talking still about financing, the external financing is also going to account for at least about 21% of the budget, and there's been worry about the rise in public debt. I know the deputy governor came out and said it's sustainable, and many people have come out and said it's sustainable, much as it has even crossed the threshold which was set of 50%. In your own opinion, currently standing at 80 trillion, that's just for your own information, but in your own opinion, is that debt still sustainable?
Thank you, Anthony. Our debt is still sustainable. And for your information, our debt is around 78 trillion. That's about 48.4% of GDP, according to numbers of Ministry of Finance. And we are going to continue borrowing only where it is necessary, where we can't avoid. And now, going forward, we are going to only borrow concession loans, which have a longer maturity period. We are cutting down on commercial loans. As you know, this debt number increased during the time, the 2 years when we were not paying taxes, when the economy was completely locked down, and some Ugandans have forgotten that we needed some money to live. Make a flashback and look at those days. We needed people to live. It was about the matter of life and death.
True.
So we had to get some money from somewhere, because nobody was working. People were not paying taxes. That's how this debt has been ballooning over the years, but we have, at the Ministry of Finance, we have a charter for fiscal responsibility. This is developed purposely to ensure that our debt is sustainable. And we have, when you look at this charter, and when you look at the numbers, we know that our debt is going to go above the threshold a bit, maybe towards 54%. But we also know that as the economy recovers, we are going to go back to not more than 50%. And this is clearly spelled out in our Charter for Fiscal Responsibility. Because we are going to put those measures, including the making sure we only borrow when we must, and for those activities that can really that we can do without. So we are very mindful as a country. As you know, there are many countries which I can't mention in Africa, which are their debt levels are really out of way. But actually, as Minister of Finance, as people are worried about this is very well regulated. We even have a framework of how we're going to manage this. But they're also worried about private debt as a country. You know, the kind of debt people are borrowing, acquiring, Kwanjula, top up, what. Of course, this is not good for our private sector. So, but going back to the debt numbers, we are very confident that this debt is going to be sustainable, and is sustainable now and in the medium term. Of course, when you look at the numbers for payment and debt servicing, is going to go up a bit, but we are sure that as we reduce on the borrowing, even this number is going to go down. So I can assure you that our debt is very sustainable now and in the medium term.
Okay, interesting. The measure of that debt to GDP ratio, I don't know if it gives us a clear understanding of debt, because well, we call it sustainable when it's at 50%, if I may say. But then there are arguments that so long as the size of the economy is growing, even if your debt reaches, let's say, 60%, it's still sustainable. Do you buy into that? Because like you mentioned, the other countries, just to be clear, USA, it's the biggest economy in the world, but it also has one of the biggest debts in the whole world. But the size of their economy grows every now and then. They keep on growing, and data comes out every now and then that the size of the economy is growing. Could it also be the same case applying to Uganda if we keep our GDP growing by getting more industries open, agro-industrialization in particular, getting more employment, people getting, actually, if you look at the US economy, they release the employment data almost every month, which we don't have here. Maybe could those be the tools that we are lacking, especially in measuring the size of our economy?
Well, this is the framework that we have as a country, measuring debt, and that's why even the debt numbers, not everybody really has to has a right to make a pronouncement, because there are certain parameters and projections that we look at to come up with that, and certain principles. If you look at what our Charter for Fiscal Responsibility, there are a number of conditionalities that we look at. So there are other variables as a country that we are looking at, and for us, we think that measure right now is sufficient for us to keep in check. So the 50%, like I told you, by maybe in next financial and the other, we may go beyond it, but still we are mindful that we shouldn't go beyond that. So this is how we think we are going to manage our debt, and we don't want to keep on borrowing when the economy is still recovering. You never know. We don't want to be in a situation where we are not able to pay our debt. For now, we are able to pay our debt, on time, and it's one of the, in addition to things like wages and salaries, debt payment is something that we do on time. So we don't want to get to that level where we are not able to pay for our debt. So right now we are comfortable with the kind of measure that we are doing, that we are using as a country. We are still a growing economy. I wouldn't want us to compare to the United States. Yeah, our economy is the head of macroeconomic policy department, Administration of Finance. Have, of course, working with the International Monetary Fund and other. This is a measure that they have agreed that really works for this country.
The other question on debt, before we go away from public debt,
Yes.
I wanted to ask, why were we borrowing in non-concessional terms in the first place? Because I understand when you talk about the non-concessional loans, these are loans that are, first of all, easily accessible. And they have very high interest rates, they have very stringent conditions, and the period of repayment is so short. Why do you think, or what do you know about us borrowing non-concessionally that has actually kept us in this spiral of debt?
Well, countries borrow on commercial terms for certain reasons. It is very possible that sometimes the concession loans that are available may not address the development needs of a country.
Is that in terms of the quantity or the conditionality?
Even availability.
Okay.
So some of these resources are conditioned.
Okay.
So, and it's not, it's possible, it's just countries can reject money if it's not going to do something they want. Priority. We have a priority. If you are saying we want money for standard gauge rail, it's a priority of government. We want money to do that. So if somebody's not giving you that money at concession terms, you have to go out of your way and ensure that you achieve this. So this is how some countries, including Uganda, have been acquiring this debt, especially for infrastructure. So you know that most of these loans have gone into this heavy infrastructure development, which many people who give us this money may not prioritize. And yet as a country, these are our priorities. You cannot imagine this time if we didn't have power. Yes. So that's the major reason why we've seen some of this debt going up. Yes.
Well, let's talk about now, shift the gears a little bit here to the government programs, the MIOGA, the Parish Development Model, and other government programs that are within now currently the national budget. The president was very passionate about the Parish Development Model when it was being rolled out last year in February, and he mentioned that even in the budget, when Mr. Matia Kasaija, the minister, was actually reading the budget, he said that even if you don't get anything from this budget, look out for the PDM. This is how important it is probably to government. But now let's get to look at the realities on the ground. We have more than 10,000 parishes in Uganda, about 10,500 or so in Uganda. And government last year rolled out a plan of 1 trillion, which addresses, I think, only 10,000 to be specific. And they're saying that they're giving every parish, every year, every financial year, at least 100 million. And this 100 million is to be shared out in the small livelihoods, the households rather, and these are supposed to be organized in groups. But for example, for people who are not earning let's say more than 10,000 a day, they're being given, for example, 1 million shillings a household. How are they going to manage this money? Is it going to be enough? Is it going to be efficiently utilized? How is the ministry planning to ensure that these funds are utilized efficiently to come out with the goal which government has of bringing these people into the money economy?
Thank you very much, Anthony. The parish development model is a core priority of government, as you know, and the president launched it. And at the Ministry of Finance, we manage pillar 3 of the parish development model, which is the financial inclusion. And as I speak now, I think we over 8,000, about 8,878 circles. The numbers could be more now.
8,700.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Have received at least the first tranches or the second, the two tranches. The money that we are supposed to, we've spent over 220 billion, 222 billion to these circles. And the issue we had with disbursement is that this money was not reaching the last mile. This is the money that we put in the bank, 13 commercial banks. And now, most of the circles had to go through a series of trainings to be able to access this money. And as I speak now, many of them have gone through this and they are getting their monies. We hope that we are not doing this for only one financial year. As you know, even this coming financial year, we are going to add more resources. So it's not that this money is a one-off. We are looking at, for instance, in 5 years, how much money is this? The money may not be a lot of money on the ground, but this is a community, this is a group of people who have been financially excluded. So even in that alone, making sure that these people who were outside the money bracket can now access money and plan to use it is a plus on our side. And we think if this money is used well, it may be small, but it can transform those people to get into the money economy. So this is not a one-off. Money is going to continue flowing. As you know, this was for last financial, even the next financial, this money is going to go, and the parish development model is really one of the priorities that we are planning to put money in the next budget. So nobody should get worried. Once all these pillars are on the ground and running, especially the one on agriculture, one promoting, and of course it's a whole value chain. There's a whole value chain. Once it all goes and it is on the ground, and with other services including access to roads, and we hope this is going to transform these societies. So we know this is one of the programs that we've looked at carefully, and we think it can transform the lives of our people who are really the 39%, what the president call those who work for Kidachonka. Yes.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We're going to return for our last segment. And as we wind up, we want to get to focus now on what people should be looking out for in the next financial year and how they can prepare themselves in the new economic environment to survive, but also to thrive, because other countries have tried to move on even regardless of the shocks that we are currently experiencing. I'm imagining, for example, a country like Turkey, they have gone through an earthquake. I don't know how long it's going to take them to recover from that, because they have been facing almost the same problems that we're currently facing, and on top of that, such a disaster could reign. So how are Ugandans supposed to prepare themselves, especially Ugandan business people, in terms of the current economic environment, so that they can survive but also thrive and move the economy forward? My name is Anthony. I'm still talking to Mr. Apollo, who is the head of communications at the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. We are returning after this very short break. Stay with us. You don't want to miss out.